you now have a highly unstable situation in Bangladesh. You have a government led by Chief Interim Advisor Muhammad Yunus, who hardly has any power. His statement in China about allowing access to the Indian Ocean through Bangladesh for China is something that was taken very seriously with India. He thought that Bangladesh was doing economically very well. He thought that all these attacks on Hindus was actually a figment of imagination of Bangladesh and international media. The problem is that there are intelligence reports to indicate that Bangladesh, with the help of China and Pakistan, is rebuilding an airbase at Lal Munir Haat, which is North Bangladesh. An army, because there is no police over there. So the entire law and order is held by army. So the country itself, with a huge debt from China, it's in dire straits. India was not interested in playing any role or any interference in Bangladesh. But then you decided that you thought that you actually could play the part and invite China in? Not possible, not allowed.
A country's fate is profoundly tied to its location, and geological cartography is sometimes just cruel. Case in point, Afghanistan. Its location is the biggest reason it has been invaded so many times. In other cases, things are not that bad. But with the size of India comes another problem: the number of neighbors. The second thing nations do not have any control over. So how do nation states deal with their cartographic fate? By establishing mutually beneficial relationships with their neighbors. But that's easier said than done, especially when there is another big neighbor, too happy to influence the smaller ones. So in this episode of Point Blank, we are taking a stock of India's neighborhood. To do that, I am joined by my senior colleague, Mr. Shishir Gupta, the executive editor of Hindustan Times. Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time and talking to us. As I said in my intro, India is uniquely located. It has multiple neighbors, small ones, but then there is a big neighbor on the other side of the border, right, which is also a neighbor to all of these smaller countries. And the influence of that country has given Muhammad Yunus the audacity to say that, he, in this case, Bangladesh, is the guardian of the ocean for the landlocked northeastern states of India. Basically, inviting China in some sense. So let's start there. Let's talk about, the problem that Bangladesh, in this case, might have created or is trying to create for India.
Abhishek, you see, you cannot choose your neighbors.
Yeah.
As India's luck would be, you now have a highly unstable situation in Bangladesh. You have a government led by Chief Interim Advisor Muhammad Yunus, who hardly has any power. The power of the state is vested with Bangladesh army. Now his statement in China about allowing access to the Indian Ocean through Bangladesh for China is something that was taken very seriously with India. During BIMSTEC, the matter was firmly raised by External Affairs Minister Jaishankar with his Bangladeshi counterpart at the ministerial. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who normally takes a bigger picture statesman-like view, he had a talk with Muhammad Yunus. But my understanding is Muhammad Yunus was quite delusional about what the state of Bangladesh. He thought that Bangladesh was doing economically very well. He thought that all these attacks on Hindus was actually a figment of imagination of Bangladesh and international media. He thought that all was well with Bangladesh. To which my understanding is that Prime Minister Narendra Modi only made it very clear that since Bangladesh requires a stable government, the first requirement of Bangladesh is to hold a democratically free and fair election as soon as possible. This is what the only thing was there. But Bangladesh, under this current government, is up to all sorts of antics. What has upset India and which led to this stopping of trans-shipment facility for Bangladesh.
We will specifically talk about it, sir.
Yes.
The reason I want you to elaborate a little bit more on this is because Yunus, since Sheikh Hasina was ousted in August last year, has been trying to get a meeting with Prime Minister Modi.
Yes.
Did not happen.
Yes.
Pak Army Chief visited Bangladesh. There were all kinds of provocations. India kept quiet. kept waiting for the elections to be held so that we can start talking with the next government. But finally, Yunus said something which India could not have let go, could not have avoided, and finally the Prime Minister met with Yunus.
There is something bigger than this. There is a serious national security concern with Bangladesh, which we have highlighted to them through institutionalized security channel. The problem is that there are intelligence reports to indicate that Bangladesh, with the help of China and Pakistan, is rebuilding an airbase at Lal Munir Haat, which is North Bangladesh, which is just about, if I'm not mistaken, about 15 to 20 kilometers from the Indian borders, which is just 115 kilometers from the Hashimara base, where Indian Rafales are stationed, which is just south of Doklam Plateau, where India, China and Bhutan were involved in a standoff way back in 2017. Now, Bangladesh, if it is doing this on the mouth or on the Siliguri corridor, which is just 20 to 22 kilometers long, this is a serious national security issue with India. And that is why the Indian government said that you have to take certain steps that nothing like this happens. Or else, there are other hard options that can be explored, and that is the state of play with Bangladesh right now.
And one of those hard options, which India was perhaps considering and now has definitely put in place, is the trans-shipment treaty. Well, that's not going to function. So explain the significance of that, because Bangladesh trade and being part of the supply chains across Southeast Asia was dependent on this treaty. And now that's not there. India is not going to facilitate that for Bangladesh.
You see, India has gone out of the way for Bangladesh in every way possible. So this trans-shipment treaty was that India would allow Bangladeshi's exports to go through 3 airports, that is Kolkata, Delhi, Bangalore. Allow the Bangladeshi exports to go through 2 seaports, Calcutta, Nhava Sheva. A total of 600 tons worth of goods were going. Despite these goods were choking our own exports, we allowed this, given that Bangladesh was a close neighbor. Now, if this has happened, Bangladesh apparel exports is going to get hit. There is a bigger picture to this also. Consider this. The Indian apparel exports, even if Trump goes on with his full tariff, which would be 26% against India, Bangladesh will be hit by 29%. Sri Lanka will be hit by 29%. So where will the entire exports come from? India. So this is one of the steps that India has told them that, listen, you better get your act in order. You have to hold an election. You hold an election and do not use your politics to do serious radicalization of the Bangladesh public. Right now, you have an organization in Bangladesh, a student organization which is backed by Jamaat. You have the BNP operating. Muhammad Yunus hardly has any power. The main player over there is army. And army, because there is no police over there. So the entire law and order is held by army. So the country itself, with a huge debt from China, it's in dire straits. India was not interested in playing any role or any interference in Bangladesh. But then you decided that you thought that you actually could play the part and invite China in? Not possible, not allowed.
Yeah, and definitely not without India reacting very strongly. And this is perhaps just the first step. If you still don't listen, well, there are other things which I'm sure the Modi government will sort of look at, other options to consider.
You see, he has been told very clearly that he has to take certain steps. Now the government, after this first step of trans-shipment ban, they're looking at other steps. Now, it is for him to take a decision. It is for him and the army chief to call for the election.
It's very stupid though. I mean, why would you threaten a much bigger neighbor, with something which is a vulnerability? I don't know what was Yunus expecting that India would do. Why would you say something like this?
I think he got carried by the moment. I think he's not a politician. I think he did not understand the implications of what he was saying.
Right.
And that is why he ended up saying what he did. And this is something which was totally red flagged in India. So this is where it is. And Yunus must understand that it was India which created Bangladesh. And he must also understand that India not only has the capability but also the capacity to defend the Siliguri corridor and take action against everybody. China knows it since 2017.
Now let's talk about, as I said in the introduction of the show of this particular episode, is that, we're going to talk about neighbors. So one neighbor we have discussed in great detail. Let's talk about some of the others, because that is where we are also seeing the impact of the Modi government's, foreign policy. For example, Sri Lanka, because the Prime Minister was there recently, because India had issues with Chinese naval ships docking, at Sri Lankan seaports.
So if you're looking at Sri Lanka, I think I'll take a bigger picture and I'll look at Indian Ocean region. Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to Mauritius.
Yes.
He went to Sri Lanka. And then there is Maldives. The international media, the leftist liberal media thought that India actually was in sort of, really hot waters with Maldives when Muhammad Yunus launched the Out India campaign when he came to power. You had Mauritius had another government. You had a government now in Sri Lanka which was actually opposed to India. The JVP has been opposed to India. But what has happened is something which has been totally upended.
Yes.
Muhammad Yunus has gone back on
Very
everything.
dramatically.
He's gone back on totally. Right? India has had one of the best bilateral visits when Prime Minister Modi went to Sri Lanka this time.
Yeah.
There is a single line in the Defence Cooperation Agreement which says India and Sri Lanka will not take any steps which are inimical to the national security interest of either country. Clear one line. The entire defence agreement is comprehensive. President Dasanaike has made it amply clear that he will not allow any ships, right, which are detrimental to Indian security interest. He is willing to go the whole hog with India, whether it is Trincomalee, whether it is Colombo, whether it's everybody else. India, unlike China, does not do debt-ridden assistance. India does developmental assistance. India does not give you loan to get equity like China did in Hambantota port. So everybody understands that India does transparent assistance. India is also the first responder if there is any humanitarian disaster, and this every country in this Indian subcontinent will understand and knows. Not only this country, everybody in the Quad countries also knows. Like recently we sent to Myanmar.
Yes.
Now, similarly, Muhammad Yunus has allowed everything. He is willing to totally go with India. And his entire Out India campaign has turned topsy-turvy. Mauritius is again very clear that it prefers India to China. So the entire Indian Ocean region, much to the chagrin of all those anti-Modi supporters, actually India is holding in Indian Ocean region.
Yeah, and it was very important for India to ensure that its influence does not wane, despite the fact that China, of course, is going to try and influence, these nations. And since they're small, all you need to do, as China has done with Mauritius, Maldives, Sri Lanka, is give them a little bit of a loan, and then influence their policies vis-a-vis India. Because, 9 out of top 10 crude oil suppliers of China, of course, pass through, that region, Indian Ocean region. Then the entire theater is also used by China to trade with Middle East, Europe, US, so on and so forth. So it's very crucial. So this temptation which these countries, despite knowing that, China does not have your best interest in mind, whereas when you talk to India, it'll be done on an equal basis. I mean, there'll be something in it for India. When you sign a deal, there'll be something in it for you.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But why does it still happen? I mean, we've seen it time and again, with Sri Lanka in particular, that China still manages to gain that, foot in that door.
You see, the point in this is that you must understand that China is actually a $17 trillion economy.
Yes.
Right?
It all boils down to money.
Yeah, but the fact remains is that India has given to the tune of, I'm not going to split up the thing, but India has given around 11 to 12 billion dollars to the IOR countries as assistance, and we have not asked for any equity. So the point in this is people understand that when India gives assistance, when Sri Lanka was in dire straits, when Sri Lanka was having a political crisis, when India gave loan to Sri Lanka without even batting a lid, when nobody was interested in Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka was going down the drain. So everybody understands that. Now, as far as China goes, about the oil trade that goes through that, one must also understand that China may have the clout, but India also has a huge leverage. Let me explain it to you very clearly. When you start from the Persian Gulf, you have to cross the 9-degree channel, which is near Lakshadweep. Then you have to cross the 10-degree channel, which bisects the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Who's there? It is the Indian Army, the Indian Air Force, the Indian Navy.
With unsinkable aircraft carriers, the islands.
Yes. So the point is, it's not, it's not that, it's a done deal with China. India is watching the play. We are very clear that we will not allow any country which is detrimental to Indian interest to take dominance in the Indian Ocean region and in the Indo-Pacific along with the Quad countries. So this is where it stands over there.
One neighbor which we have left out, because Pakistan we discussed in the previous episode, is Nepal. Let's talk about Nepal and the status of relationship between India and Nepal.
See, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had met Prime Minister AP Oli at the BIMSTEC summit. Let me make it one thing very clear. Prime Minister Oli wanted to visit India.
Okay.
He wanted to visit India as his first destination after he was sworn in as the Prime Minister. Nepal has been playing this game and trying to sort of, betting both on China and India. It's trying to play one against the other and thinking that it can get away with it. It's been doing for a long, long time, particularly the Nepalese Maoists, the broad framework, the communists. So this time, no time was given. So he had to go to China first. Then he asked for time again. And this time, Prime Minister Modi met him at BIMSTEC. My understanding is that the Indian Prime Minister made it very clear as to where our interests lie and what we can do as far as bilateral cooperation goes. But there are many other things that are happening which are detrimental to Indian interest. For instance, the use of Rohingyas in China-funded projects, China-supported projects in the Terai region of Nepal.
In Nepal, yes.
Second, the rate of conversion in the Terai area of Nepal. These two things have been highlighted by the Indian officials and have been told very clearly to Nepal that this is not even in their interests. So as far as Nepal goes, it is for Nepal to decide as to what it wants to do with India. Fact remains is that India has made it very clear that if you want to play the China game, go ahead and play it. And let's see where you go from there.
It always has to be, sticks and carrots. But on that note, thank you so much, sir, for taking the time and talking to us. Thank you.
Thank you.